More than 55 million students have been affected by school closures because of the coronavirus. But for one Tennessee young lady and her family, the school closures came after they lost everything but the clothes on their back because of a devastating and deadly tornado. I spoke to Ebony and Abrielle Davis about the devastating storm and how a charter school offered more than just an educational rescue.
The thing about your story is that it begins before COVID-19, right? It begins with, I mean, basically you lost everything. Can you tell me about that night?
March 3rd, 2020. It's a you won't forget the date. I mean, it's like you can remember everything that happened. Literally, I jumped out of my bed, I looked out my window, and it's like I seen nothing, but I heard it, and the house just started shaking. And my only reaction was to protect my daughter, at least one of them. She was the closest to me because I have two daughters. And I jumped on top of her, no questions asked, didn't care what was going to happen. My priority was at least saving one of my kids. And then the tornado ripped through the house. I seen the roof just rip off. I seen just gray skies. I seen just stuff swirling at the top. It was crazy. And then I heard the screams of my 17-year-old down the hall. I couldn't even get to her. It took seconds to catch up with what I was looking at, what I was hearing, everything that was going on. And in a split second, everything was lost. It was just gone. And luckily, my sister saved my 17-year-old. The roof fell in on both of them.
What did you think when you looked at your house?
I thought, when I looked at my house, I thought all of these years of living in my home and it's now gone. It was hard to move on because I've lived in that house ever since I was born.
So you have to rebuild. Tell us what Abrielle's school did.
Within less than 24 hours, Purpose Prep was already at the door of my daughter's grandmother's house with clothes, with those basic necessities that you take for granted, like lotion, soap, shampoo, socks, undergarments, shoes, that stuff, they were there. And then monetarily, they blew us away. The staff and the faculty, they're awesome, hands down. I can honestly say with what they gave us, we were able to get in another home.
You were saying that essentially the school provided stability at a really unstable time for you, and then the school had to shut down.
Yes. And they were already shut because of the tornado. Yeah, they lost power. So of course the kids couldn't go to school that week when the tornado hit because they lost power. And then COVID hit. At first it was like, okay, you heard about it. And, it was slowly entering into the United States. And it was like, and honestly, with everything that was already going on in my mind, I wasn't thinking about it coming to Tennessee.
You must have been also thinking, not only do I have to work, not only do I have to build a home here, but now the one piece of stability, going back to school every day is being ripped away from my daughter, but also her education. You must have been worried about the quality of education that she was going to get moving forward.
When the tornado came, luckily spring break was about to begin. They already had their spring break packets. So the parents didn't have to worry about that week skipping a beat. The education was going to still continue. Now, the concern came was, okay, now that the schools are closing for, I think at the beginning it was 2 weeks, and then it turned into a month, and then it turned to the rest of the school year. How were we going to continue that education? Because if you have a fourth grader, you're concerned because they're going to middle school next year. So we wanted to make sure that, particularly myself, wanted to make sure that Abrielle stayed on track, that she did not lose focus, and she didn't lose that knowledge that she gained while she was physically in school. And the cool thing that I like that Purpose Prep organized was every single day, Monday through Friday, they get to spend time with their peers on Google Meet. And it's for 30 minutes a day. They all get the link to get online, and they play games, they interact with each other. Um, Although they're physically distant, they're still socially together.
Abrielle, do you feel connected to your school and your classmates and your teachers still?
Yes, ma'am, I still do.
Do you feel like you're getting the same type of education, you're learning as much as you would be if you were in the classroom?
I definitely feel like I'm still getting the same education because nothing changed. Like nothing bad changed. We still discuss our homework together. We still have drills like we do in school. It's basically the same as school, but we're not at school. We're at home learning on the phone.
I'm happy that you guys are doing so well. And man, you've had so many challenges in the past couple of months. It's got to be nothing but sunshine from here on in.
It has to be. All I can say is I feel like Superwoman.
You should.
Yeah, you can never underestimate a determined mother, okay?
I have always said that. Abrielle, is your mom Superwoman?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that is the truth. They've really been through a lot, Vlad. I think what really struck me is that the school did not just think about what was needed to continue Abrielle's education, which was kind of part of a system that they did anyways. They always sent home homework packages and sort of did things online, but they also considered the holistic needs of the student, that, you know, she would have gotten peer support had she been in class. She would have gotten social workers intervening had she been in class. And so with the pandemic, all of that stuff was ripped away, not just from Abrielle, but from, you know, every other student. And so they almost immediately started to create a virtual community that would feed into the needs that are beyond academic.
You know, it is remarkable to me that in the wake of the pandemic, and I know that people want things to go back to normal, but there are, and we've been, oftentimes we use this phrase, the new normal. I don't think we should even use that. It's just normal that they are coming up with unique and innovative ways to continue education or whatever it is, and that becomes normal. So kudos to them, but I can understand how difficult of a challenge it would be.
So I also got a chance to talk to Nina Rees. She's the president and CEO of the National Alliance of Public Charter Schools, to talk about all of the challenges that many of the schools under that umbrella have faced in regards to COVID. And they all deal with, you know, different types of communities, but often they are minority communities, is what they're sort of servicing. And so we talked about the creative measures and the challenges that they've had to take on because of the pandemic.
Nina, you know, part of the conversation that we've been having throughout this whole pandemic is how schools adjust when it comes to remote learning. What are the challenges, particularly when it comes to minority communities that maybe don't have access to Wi-Fi, so remote learning isn't, you know, oh, well, just open up your laptop and take the lesson. Like, it's not that easy. So I'm curious, after talking to Ebony and Abrielle, what are some of the kind of unique things, ideas that popped up when her school realized, okay, we're not going back after 2 weeks. We're not going back for the rest of the year at all?
Well, her school is a charter school, which means that the principal of the school has a degree of autonomy to make corrections and adjustments on the go. Most of our charter school leaders did exactly what Lagra Newman, who's the principal of Purpose Prep, did, which is to figure out where they could find the funds to make remote learning arrangements available to their kids almost immediately. We have lots of examples of schools like Purpose Prep that have risen to meet not only the demand of the families in their schools, but also the demands of the community writ large. And we're extremely proud of this. We think there's something in the DNA of our charter school leaders that needs to be replicated, and that there are a lot of lessons we're learning throughout this process that can be transferred to the greater public school system.
So let's talk about some of those lessons. I mean, this pandemic offered different challenges. The pivot to remote learning not only meant that people needed that kids needed the hardware, they needed the laptops or the Chromebooks or whatever, but they also need access to Wi-Fi. How did the school handle that?
We had challenges before COVID hit, but COVID has also accentuated the challenges, and not just in our system, but also in the greater public school system. For many of our schools, the notion of offering some sort of remote learning arrangement happened very quickly. I was talking to one of the leaders of Fallon Academies, which is a network that's hubbed out of Indianapolis. He made grab and go packets available so that his students had access to food and to homework almost immediately. And then he pivoted quickly to calling every donor he had to see if they could offer him funding to buy Chromebooks. Just about every single charter school leader I've talked to has figured out a way to make these resources available, and many of them are now waiting for the federal government and others to give them the resources to continue doing this work as they approach summer school and the fall. The other thing that we've noticed very quickly is the fact that the learning gap is going to be pretty accentuated over the summer. We don't know what is going to happen to summer school in many of these instances. So making sure that these schools have the resources to continue communicating with families over the summer is going to be paramount so that they're ready for school next fall.
So we talked much more to Ebony, Abrielle, and Nina. And if you'd like to hear more of that interview, you can head to the website, cbsnews.com. One of the things that they really talked about, Vlad, particularly moving forward into the summer, and I'm kind of in that sort of a pickle, is that I realize that my daughter's still going to need some sort of educational intervention, even in the summer. And doing group projects with other kids online is actually something that is doable, and it engages them mentally, it engages them emotionally, they stay connected with their friends, and so you might get some ideas about what you can do to kind of keep the ball up in the air so kids don't slip too much come September.
I just think that the idea of figuring out ways to continue to engage children in the midst of this pandemic is really, really important. And kudos to people who have figured out a way to do that. And, Emery, look, the title of my book, right? I don't have kids, but when I listen to you, when I listen to my sister and other parents who do have children, one thing that I've become aware, and I used to be a kid, is that they're very resilient and they're very absorbing of change. And so what may seem to us as difficult to manage, for children, it just takes a couple of days before they get into the routine and the rhythm of it all, and they forget all the other stuff. And so I don't know. I'm not suggesting that it should be this way forever, but at least for now, it doesn't seem like it's having a detrimental effect.
Yeah, particularly if you have a plan and good leadership, I think kids can sort of weather this storm remarkably well.